For 8 years, Governor Mitch Daniels has served the state of Indiana. Today, a look back on Governor Daniels' time in office and perspective from the man himself as he begins his next journey to Purdue University.
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
In a short time, Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels will be stepping away from the position he's held for the past 8 years, and Governor-elect Mike Pence will be stepping in. Our TV6 reporter Norman Cox sat down with the governor to talk about his tenure in office and how he looks back on his time serving the people of Indiana.
8 years. Is Indiana better than it was?
Of course, I'm going to say yes, but so do people all over America, so I guess I'm on firm ground there. You know, far from perfect, lots of problems, of course, but yeah, we're fiscally solid and we got the best business climate around, which is, I hope, of long-term importance. We built a lot of roads and bridges that wouldn't have been there. We've set aside a lot of land protected for future generations, and you know, I think we've made a lot of progress. More than anything, we are a leadership state now. We are seen that way other places, and I hope that lasts.
And yet the unemployment rate still stubbornly high, just too much to fight the national tide?
You know, we swim upstream in two ways. The national economy is terrible, so we're outgrowing the national economy, but so what? The national economy is barely adding jobs at all. And secondly, we are proudly in the manufacturing part of America, which got hit hardest. You know, when the recession started, you'll recall, we were well below national averages and every state near us in unemployment, but we got hammered as the manufacturing capital we are, and we're just now coming back, but the future looks good there.
Give yourself a grade if you're a teacher.
Yeah, I always think it's for you and everybody else to give the grade. If I were to start, I hope I'd be a hard grader. I tend to think about things that we didn't finish or didn't do or that could have done better. But, you know, I'm going to give Indiana a good grade for the reasons we just discussed. Hoosiers have supported change, big change, in ways that we never had as a state before, ways that other states now are trying to copy. And Hoosiers have supported hard decisions when they had to be made, the kind that made us a AAA credit and put a lot of money in the bank to protect us and to give the next set of decision makers a lot of flexibility, a lot of choices that they can make about what's best in the next era.
What was the toughest accomplishment you had, the one that you had to fight hardest for?
Probably major moves. I was out a lot around the state, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of, frankly, active misrepresentation of the facts, and you know, a lot of Hoosiers. Even today, there are a few who haven't figured out what a spectacular break we got, what a great success it is. But yeah, that one was ironic because you were here the day that we announced this unbelievable bid that we had. Frankly, we got overpaid, and everybody knows that now. And it didn't, at that moment, I think most everyone thought this will be very straightforward, but it turned out instead to be one of the toughest debates we were in.
What's your biggest accomplishment? Would that be major moves, or?
Well, I always say it's like asking somebody to choose among his children. Maybe the right way to answer it is that only time will tell, but there are certain things that I think are real important but might not last. I mean, AAA credit and rock-solid fiscal shape, no guarantee that'll continue. Best business climate around right now. Jobs are coming here. We're beating other states most of the time to them, but that could change. And education reform, we've got, I think, the most pro-kids, pro-students reforms in the nation on the books, but they could be undone. Now, billions of dollars of new roads and rebuilt bridges and permanent public assets, that'll be there for 100 years. The land we have set aside, the wetlands we've protected, all these records in conservation, I don't see that going backwards. Property tax reform, we kept it constitutionally, so it can't, these taxes can't rise again as they had in the past. So some of those, I think, it's not an accomplishment if it doesn't endure. And some of these, I think, are pretty sure to. And to put a wrap on the answer, Norm, what I prefer to do, as opposed to pick out any one of these big changes, is to hope that the biggest accomplishment of these 8 years will be that Indiana's in a higher gear, and that we expect now, having experienced being a national leader in at least a variety of areas, that as citizens we won't accept something less. And if we're not innovating, if we're not tackling big problems, if we're not moving forward faster than other states, that folks will go, why not?
What was your biggest mistake?
Oh, just so many of them. I think, you know, I think the first go at welfare reform, we accepted a design that looked so good on paper, but it was just too complicated to work in practice when you're trying to administer it over millions of people. But we learned from it, fixed it in the second time, and now we've got one of the best systems in the country. But you know, I'd always better to have done it right the very first time. But you know what? There's a good lesson in that. Or you think about BMV. We made some mistakes at the outset. We didn't go overnight from a terrible system to the best in America. We turned on the new computer system before it was ready. Lots of trial and error. But you know, the important lesson there is in government, just like the rest of life, if you're going to tackle big problems, you're probably not going to shoot a bullseye the first time every time. And our attitude in this administration was we were going to take things on, we weren't going to shrink away, and we said at the outset, when you do that, sometimes you're going to have to back up and try something a second time, and I still think that's the right approach.
After the break, we're continuing our conversation with Governor Mitch Daniels, including a question on a lot of Hoosiers' minds. Does he regret not running for president? That answer coming up. Governor Mitch Daniels is on the verge of beginning the next chapter of his life at Purdue University. But the governor says there are goals he was unable to reach during his time in office. One of the biggest, getting the state superintendent's position to be appointed rather than elected.
Well, I always thought the superintendent should be appointed. And it used to be that both parties agreed on that. It's very interesting. It was one of the few things we didn't get accomplished on our report card. I've still got the tattered version over there in my desk in 2005 when we, you'll recall, it was a busiest year Indiana probably had seen in generations. And we did economic development changes, and we tackled the bankruptcy of the state budget, and we did sweeping ethics reform, and on and on. One thing we didn't get done was the good government reform of having an appointed superintendent, as 4/5 of the states do. It's very interesting that it was the only thing I could find that the Republican and Democratic platforms of that year agreed on, but we didn't get it done.
We hear that a lot of businesses are coming to Republican leadership and saying, is there some way you can sidetrack this second vote on the gay marriage amendment? We just fear what it's going to do as far as our ability to attract help here. As an advocate of subordinating social issues to economics and jobs, do you think that this ought to be maybe put on the siding?
Well, that's for the leadership to decide, but I understand the argument that's being made, and others are also pointing out that the courts may soon, or the Supreme Court may have something to say about it, and you might want to wait on events. But good example of one of those things that I'm just a private citizen now, and it's best left to those who will hold the public trust in another 30 days.
One of those is Leucadia Rockport.
Yeah.
A lot of critics are saying that with the price of natural gas plunging, this is going to turn into a bad deal for taxpayers. How confident are you that your vision of this is going to turn out to be the correct one?
No, I'm still confident, and I look at it all the time. Let's remember where this started. This is about jobs in a very poor part of the state. This is about paying Hoosiers for energy instead of exporting those dollars to some other country or some other state. And it will do both those things in a very important way in a part of Indiana that maybe folks in Indianapolis never see, but I've spent a lot of time in and needs our care and needs our help. Now, in terms of the gas itself, the price of gas is not going to stay where it is. It's going to come back up. You can think of this the way a farmer thinks of hedging part of his crop. If you can get a good price for part of your crop and lock it in, you have protected yourself. And $6 gas, historically, is a great price. Even 3 years ago, people would have done anything for gas that cheap. So, my guess is, over the long sweep of this contract, with the guarantees that it has in place too, with the fact that the state will share in ancillary revenue, it's not just the price of gas, remember, they're going to sell other products that come off of this process, that this will work out just fine for ratepayers. And in the meantime, people should not overlook the fact that it will have put a lot of people to work, and it will keep Hoosier dollars inside Indiana where we'd like them to be.
The election's over. President Obama was reelected, but every poll shows that that voters didn't really have that much enthusiasm for him. They just thought that Mitt Romney was worse. Do you have any regrets now about running, and do you think you could have won?
I don't regret it for two reasons. First of all, it was a decision that was right from a family standpoint. Secondly, I was serious. You heard me say many times, Norm, that I told Hoosiers I never ran for an office before. I don't plan to run for another one. I just want to serve in this job, try to make decisions, not out of any ambition or not with an eye to anything else, but as best we can in the interest of this state. And we were able to honor that commitment by serving all 8 years. Related to that, we got a lot of things done in year 7 and year 8 that I think are very important. Education reform, another solid budget, right to work too, that would not have happened if I'd running for president. Could we have won? Maybe so. I mean, people are certainly writing that these days, but easy to say now. I don't spend a minute thinking about it, because what good would it do? But I will say that the pathway, at least to nomination, I think was as open as you could imagine it being, but something probably would have gone wrong. I told a lot of people who liked that idea, I said, listen, careful what you wish for, because if we do this, I will say to our fellow citizens what the situation is, what the problems are, the kind of things we need to do to protect the American dream. And it might be the most interesting presidential campaign in a long time for the 3 months till it blows up.
In other words, you might be like the backup quarterback. You're the most popular guy in town to get in the game.
Well, a little bit. I mean, I happen to believe, wrote a book to this effect, that you can level with the American people. If you start from the emphatic standpoint that this is all about poor people, this is all about young people, this is all about folks who are yet to have in American society, here are the things we need to do, but that's what we're doing them for. I still believe, I'm not among those cynics who think, well, the Americans just want it all. They want money, money, money from somewhere, and they don't want to pay any taxes.
No taxes and lots of services.
I'm not, I'm more optimistic than that. It would have been interesting to go find out, but, you know, maybe the skeptics are right.
Can you ever see yourself getting back into politics, not running for office, because you said you won't do that, but as an appointed, maybe a cabinet position?
No, I don't think so. I think the clock will run out on that. I've taken on a new challenge, and you know, if it works out to produce satisfaction, which maybe it wouldn't, but if it does, then it seems to me that's my last big professional endeavor.
2012 is about to come to a close, and it has been an exciting year in local and national politics. After the break, our political insiders give their final thoughts on an exciting election year. We are joined now by our political insiders, Robert Vane, Laura Beck, Kip Tu, and Abdul Hakim Shabazz. We knew 2012 was going to be a big year in politics, being an election year. 2010, we saw the rise of the Tea Party. So what do you guys feel like this year's big statement was? Ladies first, Laura?
Oh, wow. I'm so excited I get to speak before all of you. That's so exciting. There were a lot of big statements, but I think one of the biggest takeaways is that President Barack Obama was reelected. And I defer the rest of my time to Kip.
Well, if we're talking about surprises, I think the biggest surprise was that Richard Lugar got defeated in the primary by Richard Murdoch. It certainly was a sign that the Tea Party at that moment was alive and well within the Republican Party in the state of Indiana because they defeated Richard Lugar.
All right.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I would say the biggest surprise was Richard Murdoch's comment during that second U.S. Senate debate with the comment regarding rape and God's will, because First of all, with all the hassle and things that have popped up with Todd Akins in Missouri, you think people would stay away from that, but he made the comment and then doubled down on it the next day, and that totally cemented Joe Donnelly's victory.
Robert.
Glenda Ritz is the biggest surprise by far. I never would have predicted it, still can't believe it. I hope it doesn't adversely affect the reform movements that are going around in Indiana. I have a 6th grader and a 4th grader, and they've prospered under Tony Bennett's reforms. That's the biggest surprise to me by far.
All right. Who do you think was the biggest rising political star in Indiana in 2012?
Can I say Susan Brooks? Do you guys want to say Susan Brooks?
You can say Susan Brooks.
I'm not going to say
Are we
so.
all in
Susan Brooks, she is the perfect representative not only for Indiana in that district, but also for Republicans. Our image has taken a beating. A lot of it self-inflicted. I mean, we just have to be honest here. A lot of it self-inflicted. Susan Brooks is brilliant. She's accomplished. She's respected. She's extremely well-liked. And she comes at a perfect time for Hoosier Republicans and for the Republican Party across the country.
Kip.
I think that's wishful thinking on his part, but I mean, she is a star, and I think it's where he thinks the Republican Party ought to go, which is get away from the Tea Party, and I hope they do, because I want them to return to a responsive and responsible party, because I think Democrats do well when they are that. I think probably the biggest star on our side has to be Joe Donnelly. He is now a United States Senator. He was a congressman. I wouldn't say he's a rising star. I'd say he's now a star, but that's my answer.
I'll have to go with Susan Brooks. Mainly reason because she won and got through the primary, and she did it without signing these stupid pledges or any of those little silly gimmicks that really don't mean a thing in the grand scheme of things. She just ran on her record, you know, as a former U.S. attorney, as someone who's worked in education and workforce development, and I could definitely see her with a long, prosperous future here in the state of Indiana.
Laura.
I think that I agree with Kip on Joe Donnelly. I do think he is a star. I think there were a couple other rising stars that came out, especially during the congressional campaigns. I think Brendan Mullen, who ran in the 2nd Congressional District and did a fabulous job. Locally, I think one of the rising stars particularly is Maggie Lewis, the president of the council. She is articulate, she's smart, she's doing a great job managing the caucus and serving as an effective counterweight to Mayor Ballard. So I think she's someone we should watch as well locally.
All right. This next question may sound a little harsh, but it is what it is. Who was the biggest loser in Indiana?
I go back and forth. I have 2 people who've tied for first place with that one. One is Jim Holden, who ran Richard Murdoch's campaign, and the other one is Brian Mahern, who saw basically his mayoral aspirations go up in flames when he realized he couldn't win vice president of his own caucus on the Indianapolis City County Council
because
he couldn't get
to
8
beat on
people to vote for
Brian,
him. So it's a toss-up between those 2.
Kip, you look like you want to weigh in on that one.
He just has a personal dislike for Brian, which I don't think is something I want to comment on. I think Brian's an effective leader and will continue to be an effective leader. But let me say that probably the biggest loser has to be Richard Lugar. I mean, a guy who should have gone out on top after a long and distinguished career. Unfortunately, did not go out on top. It was toppled over by the Tea Party extremist movement in the state of Indiana, and I hope that's the end of it. I hope that was the nadir of their existence.
It's a great use of the word nadir.
I hope I did it right.
You did. It was very impressive.
Biggest loser, Robert? Not that you're the biggest loser. Bigger loser, Robert.
You know, I'll be slightly partisan, and I would say this: the Indiana Democratic Party. I'll even call it Democratic instead of Democrat.
Thank
the
you for
Indiana
that.
Democratic Party over the last 8 years, culminating. Donnelly won. He won. I thought he was going to lose. He won because of Murdoch's egregious remark and then how it was handled. But you think where the Indiana Democratic Party was in October 2004, statewide, and where it is now after 8 years of Mitch Daniels. They don't have the mayoral office of Indianapolis, Republican supermajorities in the House and Senate, 3 consecutive wins in the governor's race, Attorney General's Republican. The list goes on and on. 7 congressmen, I should say. So the Indiana Democratic Party is in tough straits. Maybe Donnelly can pull them out. I don't know. But that would be my answer.
All right. Have you weighed in yet? Laura?
Not yet.
Okay, biggest loser.
I haven't deferred my time to anyone yet. Richard Murdoch definitely was, I think, probably the biggest loser, and the Tea Party. I think that connection of the 2 of them together really brought him down. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's an intelligent man. I think he's a nice man. But the way that campaign was run really did not serve him well. And at the end of the day, a candidate is in charge of their campaign. So I think he really had the most to lose, and he lost it.
There are 2 statewide Republican candidates, Mike Pence, Richard Murdoch. One of them realized you had to build a coalition to win, even in Indiana as a Republican, and that candidate won, Mike Pence. One,
Barely.
didn't try to build a coalition, didn't think he needed to win in Indiana as a Republican, and that candidate lost. That's instructive for our party.
All right, when we come back, more from our political insiders as we look ahead to 2013 after the break. We are joined again by our political insiders for one last question. What is one big, bold prediction that you have for 2013? Kip?
Well, maybe in line of more wishful thinking than anything else, but I'm going to say that the same-sex marriage ban that folks want to put in the Constitution will not pass the legislature this year. Either it'll be changed or it won't come out.
Van Harrell, former 9th District Congressman, will begin laying the groundwork for a gubernatorial run for 2016.
All right, Laura?
This is very much wishful thinking. Very, very much wishful thinking.
It's okay.
But preschool for children who need it most. We all know that pre-K is really what lays the groundwork for a solid academic future. And I hope Governor-elect Pence is listening. But it's very important. That's my bold prediction. It's going to happen.
Robert?
You're going to see Mayor Greg Ballard expand his profile to a little bit more of a national scope. He's had a great year. He's had a great 5 years as mayor. And what you're going to see is him start to get more attention because he is the mayor of the largest city. The cities above him in population all have Democrat mayors. You're going to see him start to do more and more, and deservedly so. He has done an outstanding job as mayor, and more people need to hear about it.
Thank you all for your contributions this year. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go Colts.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
For this edition of Indianapolis This Week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Erica Fly. Have a happy new year.